And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
And Abaddon. Woohoo! Been waiting for this for a long time. True story. About a decade ago, I was getting rid of my Warhammer 40,000 collection. I had a whole pile of Eldar. We're talking 10,000 points. A giant army. And I found some, I said, I want to get board games. Does someone want this whole collection? I will trade them for board games. And some guy said he would do it. He was a designer of board games, and so he sent me a whole pile of board games that he had designed and had published in exchange for my collection. Awesome. Great deal. And I got some really good board games out of it, and got to know this board game designer a little bit, Richard Borg, who, as we all know now, is a designer of the very, very popular Commands and Colors series with Battle Lore, Memoir 44, Commands and Colors, Ancients, Battle Cry, Commands and Colors, Napoleonics. And this is another game that is kind of like that. Abaddon, but when I traded him all these pieces, he said he was going to make a sci-fi version of the game. Oh, frabjous day! And that is what this is. I mean, we're talking miniatures, cool stuff in here. Mechs, or they call them links, whatever. Let's take a look at the game, and we'll be back. Abaddon takes place on a battlefield, and this battlefield is going to be where you have different missions. The book has many different missions involved in it, and you can see that there is 16 different missions. Some of them are 2-player and some of them are 4-player, although most of the 4 players will be 2-on-2, but you can even have some that are different. You're going to set up terrain, and the terrain is made of 2 cardboard pieces that are pressed together, and it goes diagonally on one of the squares here. Basically, terrain just stops you from going into a spot and blocks line of sight. There's 3 different terrain, but so far in any of the scenarios that I've played and gone through, I haven't seen a difference between them. Now, what's really cool in this game are the models. I mean, these are really nice. They look good. They're not super detailed, but they're very good, I think. I mean, and each of these models comes on a base and has a sticker that you put on the back of it to show the movement, the battle die, and the power that this unit has. And there's infantry, and then there's 3 mechs. You have your light, medium, and heavy mech. Heavy mech looks awesome. Love to drive around in this thing. And the power number on it, for example, the light mech has a power of 3. So let's say I was the yellow player. I would stick in 3 of these pieces here in the base. You can see there's slots down here for 3. Now, these pieces look a little weird. They almost look like Christmas lights. And at first I was a little like, I don't know. But you know what? They don't come out very easily. They stay in. And you instantly can look at the board and recognize which mechs are which players just by the color that's underneath there. As mechs take hits, you're going to take these out. And so that's the way to, when they're all gone, the mech is destroyed. Also, each one that comes out, your opponent is going to keep in a cup. And this is to keep track of his victory points. When they destroy a mech completely, or an infantry unit, depending on what type it is, you're going to get 1, 2, or 3 bonus points to throw into the cup. And so each mission is to get a certain amount of victory points. Now, you're going to be drawing these little tokens over the course of the game, and they will show you what position you go in. So I get to go first, and that will change from round to round. And the way the game works is it's going to be using activation dice. On your turn, you have 5 activation dice. So we roll these dice, and let's say this is my roll here. I can assign these dice to the different units. So I can assign 2 of these to 1 infantry unit or 2 different infantry units. I can use one to the heavy, they don't call them mechs, they call them links. A heavy link, I'll call them mechs by accident most of the game. And a medium link, and then I got a weapon system here. So I can assign 2 of these to 1 infantry, like I said. But if I do that, that means it can move twice, but it still can only fire once. Or I can do 2 different infantry if I have them. If I roll the weapons system that I rolled earlier, then I will get to draw a weapon system card. And this is important because you want these cards in your hand. Then you also have a command icon, which is important because it lets you move any mech, or again, it lets you draw a card. And there's even one card that forces you to use a command token to activate it. So each of the mechs, for example, this light mech here moves 3. You can see it on its movement. So I move the different mechs as across the board. And then when I'm done moving, the mechs that I have activated, even if I don't move them, I can fire with those mechs. What I'll do is I'll take this and I'll point it at the mech that I'm firing at. If I'm directly next to the mech, I don't even need a card. I just do hand-to-hand combat. But if I'm firing a mech, I'll place that. That mech has an opportunity to do return fire on me by playing a card, shooting back at me. If two mechs are shooting at the same mech, he can only return fire on one of them, so maybe you can set up some strategy there. After we place all these cards, we'll turn them over, and mine is 2, and theirs is a 1. Now at the beginning of the round, and this is something I forgot to mention because I forgot doing it during the games, was you have this token that tells you what turn order, but you can put this token on any mech you want, and that mech you basically have targeted, so you have a +1 against him. So in this instance, I'm shooting at the medium mech. I have 3 because I have 1 from that token and 2 from my card. So I'm going to be adding 3 to my roll, and he did this one, and he has 1 to his roll. Now, I'm a light mech shooting at a medium mech. A light mech is going to roll a 6-sided die. A medium mech rolls an 8-sided die. The heavy Lank rolls a 10-sided die, and the infantry rolls a 6-sided die also. Now, when we roll these dice, so let's say the two, there's the light mech, and there's the medium mech. 4 + 1 is 5. 1 + 2, 3, 4 is 5. It's a tie. Now, in case of a tie, both players discard their cards, and they both get to draw a new card. Hurrah! Okay, ties are kind of a pain in the neck. Nothing happens. If someone had done damage, they would have done damage, and the other person doesn't get any damage. But wait, you say, you're forgetting a rule. And yes, I am forgetting a rule, dear reader or listener. And that is because when I roll a 1, I've done a critical hit. 1s are great. Everyone loves 1s. Because when you roll a 1 and you are not in hand-to-hand combat, then you instantly score a critical hit on the opponent. And rather than compare the damage totals, you don't do that anymore. Instead, the person who takes a hit is going to draw a wildfire card. And this one, anti-gravity surge, it sends them flying backwards. Or this, it does a hit for 2 damage. And sometimes it will cause you to put a specific thing on the mech. Like this has a sporadic pulse now, so I'll stick that in one of the slots. And that mech is stuck with sporadic pulse for the remainder of, well, for a while anyway. And so it does 1 damage to him, and he can move or battle, but not do both. So they have to leave that card in front of them. So it can be really annoying. If no one rolls a 1, though, of course you compare the numbers, and one person does damage. And if you notice both the cards that we played here, this 1 scores 2 additional damage, and this 2 scores 1 additional damage. That makes up for it being a lower number. Many of the cards that are in the game will allow their higher, target 4. They go all the way up to target 8, and they're great. But at the same time, these lower ones, they might not be so worth it, but they might do more damage. There are other cards that allow you to, like you play those in face up, long range bombardment. You can shoot at someone even if you don't have line of sight. There are smart bombs, but an opponent can always play an anti-missile missile to stop those. A player can also use one of these to stop a regular attack. It just stops it straight up. There's no die roll. Now, the defender doesn't have to play a card. In fact, they may verily not be able to play one. They don't have any. In that case, they still make a defensive roll. They don't add anything to it, and it's basically just their shields. And if they win, they don't inflict damage on the attacking mech. They simply just stop from getting damage. And so that's basically how the game works. You're going to be running around, punching each other, shooting at each other, playing these cards, trying to get more cards, and you roll the activation dice to see which mechs you're moving, but then you'll be rolling these 6-sideds, 8-sideds, and 10-sideds to see what the results of the battle is. The first person to get to the predetermined amount of points for a scenario, say for example 20, is the winner of the game. The first thing we got to say is that this is just tremendous miniatures in this game. They're really cool. They're like begging to be painted. They look neat. And the game just looks really nice, and I'm glad to have this sci-fi thing. Now, as you can see how it plays, it's entertaining. I enjoyed it. I would say this is a very good game, but it's not going to go into the great category of games, mostly because it's very random and fairly light. The dice that you roll, you may not get to activate the mechs that you need to roll. The cards, there's a pretty wide spread. But that doesn't mean it's not fun. I still enjoy it. I would place this at just a little bit of a level below Memoir 44. And I enjoy Memoir 44 a lot. Here, the cards, and there's a bit of bluffing. What card did he play? Who am I going to attack? And turns go back and forth very quickly. 4-player games work, but it's essentially a 2-player game. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can play 4 players, but then it's kind of 2-on-2, and anything that's more than that kind of devolves. There's a lot of scenarios included with the game, although they feel samey and you're using the same 4 units. But I don't have a problem with those same 4 units. I really like the critical hit idea. I really like the fact that if you have nothing else, no cards in your hand, you can still wait up and punch the other person. It's neat. I like how the infantry, they're slow, they can get shot at, but they have some cards that help them do some extra damage, and it's just neat. It's not fantastic by any means, but it's a good, solid game. This is a game that if I had tweens or even teenage boys, this would be a game I would buy for them because I know they would like it. This would be a game when I was a kid I would have played all the time. Nowadays, not so much. I'll play it and I'll have fun, but this is a game I'm going to bring and play with kids. I mean, otherwise I might go for something a little bit heavier, more strategic, memoir, battle lore, that sort of style. But don't get me wrong, I love the sci-fi part of this, and I love how quick it is. And it's maybe that this would be a stepping stone into getting into something more complex like BattleTech. But is it worth your money? I think so. I mean, but you got to realize what you're getting into. Look at the rules and how I explained it. It's that kind of level of lightness. So that is Abaddon.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.